Hello, comrades. On Sunday, at December the 1st at 5 p.m., there will be a special session of the Communist Forum. We're looking at Marx and psychoanalysis and the complex of Freudo-Marxism. The introduction will be by Ian Spencer, who works as a mental health nurse and has done his master's on the comparison of the concept of human nature in Marx and Freud, and has got a PhD on the political abuse of psychiatry in the USSR. Ian, just give us a quick preview, please. In a nutshell, what has Marxism got to do with psychoanalysis? Some of Freud's theories were quite reactionary, weren't they? And he was sometimes a bit of a misogynist, no?
Whatever Freud said was not the final word, and psychoanalytic theory has developed since. Freud's own theories, his own ideas were, in the words of Trotsky, at times fantastic conjecture. And of course, a lot has happened since in neuropsychology and much else besides. One of the important things about psychoanalysis is that whole question about consciousness and that relationship that exists between the material basis of society and the superstructure, as it were, of ideas and consciousness that rises above it and is based upon it. How do we avoid, for example, a sort of simplistic notion that the economic base of society influences the superstructure of our ideas? As Marxists, we know that's palpably false. It isn't just simply a one-way street. And what psychoanalysis does is I think it gives an opportunity to look at consciousness and that there are factors at play which extend beyond the mere economic or the mere political.
What's the Freudo-Marxism then?
After the development of psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud, there were quite a lot of others, such as Erich Fromm, Herbert Marcuse, both of whom went through the Frankfurt School in Germany. And developed their own particular take on psychoanalytic theory, providing something of a synthesis between Marxism and psychoanalysis. Whether that's a successful synthesis is open to research and study, and people will have their own views on the question. I find in particular Erich Fromm has some very interesting observations on the psychopathology, for want of a better word, of Nazism. And authoritarianism. How do we get an authoritarian personality? How do we get a whole population of among the most civilized in the world to go along with something so abominable as Nazism? Or, closer to home, why is it that the British working class still cling to a kind of idea of superiority drawn down from the years of empire? To explain it purely in terms of its imperialism and the privileges that gave us as a nation isn't always entirely satisfactory. Why would people kind of cling to the notion of the crown and the church and so on, rather than recognize their common interests with other workers throughout the world?
I'm very skeptical of using psychoanalysis for the situation in Germany. I think sort of the repressive regime, and you're getting into a concentration camp if you're a communist, will have had some role to play. But I'm sure we'll discuss that on Sunday then. So, as a Marxist, do you think briefly psychoanalysis can be useful?
Speaking only personally, and in the context of clinical work, I found it useful. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I would have liked to have trained it, but it's a very expensive modality to train in. But for example, I've worked with people with personality disorders who often will self-harm. And to a great extent, I'm not just talking about a few scratches here or there, but cause really significant harm to themselves. And there's an idea, I think, that's quite widespread that somehow disclosure of itself is a therapeutic act. And people will say it when, I'm glad I got that off my chest, or I'm so pleased I've been able to tell somebody about it. I feel so much better. However, what we also see is that quite often people say all sorts of things about themselves, which are not necessarily as true as they might think. As Anna Freud developed, there are a whole range of different kind of mental defense mechanisms by which we protect our fragile sense of ourselves against critical views of other people. Powerful insights by Freud into something called transference and countertransference, by which the client sees in the analyst all sorts of positive characteristics which are not necessarily there. And similarly, the analyst will respond in kind. It's not at all unusual for people to kind of fall in love with people in a therapeutic relationship, and it's not confined to that either. You see similar things in teaching. Or indeed in the leadership of political organizations, people projecting all sorts of characteristics onto the dear leader or of one sort or another. And to understand those kinds of mechanisms is to give you a little bit more insight, I think, into consciousness than just simply an idea of being determines consciousness, or it's an economic relationship. Quite often there's a lot more to it than that.
Very interesting subjects, a wide array of issues we can discuss on Sunday. So please join us Sunday, December the 1st at 5 p.m. Here's the link.